It reads, I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. Our feet shall stand within thy gates, O Jerusalem. Jerusalem is built as a city that is compact together. Whether the tribes go up, the tribes of the Lord, unto the testimony of Israel, to give thanks unto the name of the Lord, for they are set thrones of judgment, the thrones of the house of David. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. They shall prosper that love thee. Peace be within thy walls, and prosperity within thy palaces. For my brethren and my companions' sakes, I would now say, peace be within thee. Because of the house of the Lord our God, I will seek thy good. May the Lord add a blessing to the reading and hearing of his word. We just want to talk about part 2, I was glad. Part 2, I was glad. That's the first sermon I ever preached at St. John. I know how Reverend Green felt the other Sunday night when he stood at this pulpit. But I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. Deacon Jeffrey, this is part 2. I was glad when they said that to me, let us go into the house of the Lord. You know, my mind just goes back. Sometime I would get here at 5 minutes after 9, and Deacon Pope would give me that nod. I had to go up to the balcony. You know why? Because St. John was compact together. You got here at 5 after 9 on a Sunday night. You just was to head upstairs to the balcony. You know why? Because I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. And I know I'm in the right place because I'm lining up with what the pastor's been preaching and what Reverend Green preached. Reverend Green preached the first Sunday night. He preached about David. He just talked about that army, that war that they had. And then the pastor told us over at Grace Baptist Church just 2 Sundays ago, he said, don't give up, look up in Psalms 121. See, we ought to be listening. Y'all think I just be sitting over there, but I be listening though, okay? But he said, I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. You know, we come from those families. All our families ain't alike, you know, but I was just glad. Sometimes we say what's good to us is good for us, is not good to us. But, you know, I'm just glad of what I had to go through in life. We talked about the old folks. Pastor Payton prayed about the old folks in his sermon. I come from one of those families where my grandmother had a drug problem. I may not have liked it, but it was good to me. She drugged me to Sunday school, BTU, choir rehearsal, mission, but I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. And then I was going to miss Sunday church one Sunday night. My grandfather said, ain't no better place to be than in the house of the Lord. But I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. Ain't that good news? Over in the book of St. John, in St. John chapter 14, verse 1, it says, in my Father's house are many mansions. Ain't that good news? Down here, you got to worry about escrow. You got to worry about downsizing. You got to worry about rent going up. But just think, I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. Ain't that good news? What other place you rather be but in the house of the Lord? Ain't that good news? And you know, if you just would have been here Wednesday night, I seen the parking lot. In the front parking lot, it was full, Pastor. I don't know how the back parking lot was, but the front parking lot was full. And the pastor spoke to us. I just got so happy I was able to get off of work and get here. But he said, there's one thing he said that really made sense. He said, you got to listen. See, when you be swift to hear when you come into the house of the Lord. I was glad. This is where you get it from, the house of the Lord. You can't get it nowhere else but in God's word. That's what he told us in Sunday school today. I was glad. Sunday school is not just for young folks. It's for old folks. You never get enough of this, Brother Bush. God's word, it just keeps growing in you. But I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. Ain't that good news? You could go into the house of the Lord. No better place to be than in the house. We're still in Psalms 122. And before you get to Psalms 122, you got Psalms 121. Before you get to 121, you got Psalms 120. But what happened was, those people had been in captivity. And they was being treated bad over there in Babylon. But in Psalms 120, they was told to pray for those who didn't believe in God and pray that they would have a safe time while they was over there. But the good news about it, they wasn't going there to stay. Ain't that good news? God said he knows our expected end in Jeremiah. Ain't that good news? I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. Them old folks, they couldn't wait to get to church on Sunday down there in the old country. They didn't have Cadillac, they had horseback, but they couldn't wait to get to church. Ain't that good news? But I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. And look who else could write this. Nobody but the psalmist, David. The shepherd boy. You know, God, man looks on the outside, but God looks on the inside. They wonder could David do it because he had been out there in the sheep. But that ain't God, that ain't your call. That's God's call. The pastor told us that today. God is called. What is for you, it is for you. What is for me, it is for me. But David was chosen as a man of God. A man after God's own heart. Nobody said he was perfect, for we know he sinned with Bathsheba, but yet still he was a man after God's own heart. And in God's favor ain't fair. You in the will of God, you're in the will of God. Ain't that good news? But I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. Ain't that good news? And the word glad means to be happy, elated. I thought about Sister Sonia Bush, how she runs all up and down the choir stand all the time. She's elated. You know what she said? I get excited when I think about Jesus. Ain't that good news? I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. Not just anybody's house, but the Lord's house. Ain't that good news? And look who he had to write about that, David. You know, David had to go through some things. He was a psalmist. The story was once told about the young man who recited the 23rd Psalms, and they said all the people clapped. But then they said when the old man recited the Psalms, they started crying and weeping and everything. They said, why did they clap for the young man and cried for the old man? Well, see, the young man knew the Psalms, but the old man knew the psalmist. I'm just telling you, that's what David is all about. I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. And then, you know, Saul was jealous of David. You know why? Because David was a man after God's own heart. Reverend Green told us that on the first Sunday night. They say Saul has killed his 1,000, but David has killed his 10,000. You know why? Because David always sat before the Lord. When he did wrong, he sat before the Lord. When he did good, he sat before the Lord. He always sought the Lord. You know why? Because he said, I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. And see, this is a Psalms of degree of David. You know what a degree is? That means you done graduated. You stepped up a little higher. See, David could write this, but he had some experience. You got to have some experience with the Lord. And you can say, I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. Ain't that good news? This is a Psalms of degree. Some of it says decrees and some say degree, but this was a degree of the Songs of David. And we know he didn't write all of them, but they said he's credited with writing 72 of them. But I like this one, though. I was glad. I'm happy that I got to know the Lord for myself. I used to wonder sometime about having to sit on the bench over in San Francisco at First Union. I had to sit by a mother named Mother Effie Mims. She was 102 years old when she died. She was out of Waco, Texas. But I had to sit next to her. But look where I'm sitting now, in the front of the church. I was glad. But you know, that's where I got my learning from, the church. And if you want to learn, you got to come to Sunday school and Bible study. That's where you're going to get it from. Remember, that's what he told Moses. He said, there I'll meet you in the Holy of Holies. He told Moses, that's where I'll meet you at. What is that? The house of God. I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. Ain't that good news? God is good to us, church. Ain't no better place to be. All them people had to go through things to get where they are. I thought about Minister Jean this week at work. You know, I don't know why you're looking at me. If you only knew what I've been through, you'd be praising God too. I stopped by to tell you, I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. You're going to be down sometimes, but do like Lizzie said. That was David that said that I encourage myself in the Lord. I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. I'm going to come in a minute, but we just had to treat the text. You know, you got to treat the text. You know how the doctor tell you don't move? Well, there's healing in this place. There's saving in this place. There's the word of God in this place. But I was glad when they said unto me. Now, if you leave here and say you didn't get nothing, that means you didn't bring nothing. That's what it's all about. But I was glad when they said unto me, Deacon Lemier, let us go into the house of the Lord. This is the place that I got saved at, the house of the Lord. I didn't just get saved anywhere. The pastor told us Wednesday night, you can't just have one room to just do anything. You need to have a room for the Lord. You got to separate yourself and have a room for the Lord. I told y'all, he told us Wednesday night, you ought to be listening. I don't care if I'm sitting in the back, I'm still listening. But I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. And I'll trade places with anybody if I could take off work on Sunday and come to church. Y'all don't want to come to church on Sunday, y'all take my day, okay? But I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. So this psalmist right here is telling us about it. It says, oh, Jerusalem. You know, Jerusalem was the holy city. Before it was called Jerusalem, it was called Salem. But then it was changed to Jerusalem. And what do we say when we leave here? I expect to spend eternity living around the throne. Where? In the New Jerusalem. That's the holy city. And see, these people had been in captivity for 70 years. But you know how they got in captivity? Just because, like us, disobedience. They should have learned from the Syrian captivity. He said, you're going to go down to Babylon for 70 years. But you know what? The Lord promised to take care of them while they was there. But they had to pray for the enemies. I was glad when they said unto me, don't lose contact with the Lord. Don't give up on the Lord, because he won't give up on you. I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. You know, prayer does things. It says, oh, Jerusalem is built as a city that is compact together. St. John, y'all are compact together. I know when y'all moved from Filbert Street, y'all came down Market Street, but the church is compact together. Pastor Anderson told y'all, stay together. Stay in the ship no matter what you're going through. Stay in the house of the Lord. You ought to put on your running shoes and be trying to run to get to church on Sunday. He just asked for one day. Every day is his, but he just asked for one day. And you know how we could do that? I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. And you know how you do that? You take Route 66. You know what Route 66 is? It's 66 books in the Bible. But you got to travel up the King's Highway. I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. You know, over in Exodus, it says, remember the Sabbath day and to keep it holy. And then over in Hebrews, it says, forsake not the assemblies of yourselves together. You see how the old and the new go together? You got to take Route 66. But I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. We got to get down the highway today, so I'm going to come on in a minute. But it says Jerusalem is built as a city that is compact together. And when it's compact, that means it's closed. It's fitted right. Y'all said when Pastor Anderson got the vision, he painted this church. But it's compact together. And you know, the church is not the building. The church is us. It's not an organization. It's an organism, and it's on the move. But I was glad when they said unto me, this ought to be personal. Let us go into the house of the Lord. You know, he asked Peter, he said, Peter, who do men say that I am? Peter say, some say Elias, some say Jeremiah. He said, but who do you say that? He said, thou art the Christ, the Son of the living God. He said, Peter, upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. But I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. And it says, whether the tribes go up, the tribes of the Lord, unto the testimony of Israel, to give thanks unto the name of the Lord. It's a good thing to give thanks unto the name of the Lord. Look over there in Psalms 92 where it says it's a good thing to give thanks unto the Lord, oh, Most High. He's not just anybody. He said, oh, Most High. I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord, oh, Most High. And look what it says. It says, pray for the peace of Jerusalem. They shall prosper that love thee. God wants us to be prosperous in good health. He told us over there in 1 John, I pray you be prosperous in good health. He said, just don't put nothing before them. Abraham, Isaac, and all those people was prosperous. But you know what they said? I'm going to pay my tithes. Jacob said, I'm going to give you a tenth. You know, Sister May Artist told us about that word DBT, debt. You do everything but tithe. But I stopped by to tell you, I was glad that I'm able to pay my tithes. All he asked for is 10%, and he leaves you with the 90%. And that still don't break even with what God did for us. But pray for the peace of Jerusalem, and they shall prosper that love thee. For my brethren and my companions' sake. That's those of us who come to believe. Brethren ain't leaving the sisters out. That means believers. And my companions' church, every church that stand open in God's name. It says, peace be within thy walls. And it says, because of the house of the Lord thy God, I will seek thy good. Church, we're only to do good. We're only to see good. Yeah, we fall short, but we get back up. But I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. But we seek good. That's what it's all about. Can't you just hear the old folks singing those old home songs? Down home, them Dr. Watts. I can't get ready for devotion with Kirk Franklin. I'm sorry, I can't do it like that. I ain't got nothing against Kirk Franklin, but I wasn't converted like that. Maybe I should have been converted on the mourner's bench, but I got that old-time religion, and it's good enough for me. But I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. Can't you hear Methuselah? He missed the mark by 31 years. He lived 969 years. And Dr. Watts got out the pen, and he wrote that song, on Jordan's stormy banks I stand, to Canaan's fair and happy land, to cast a wistful eye, that's where my possession lie. Ain't that good news? I was glad. That's how the old folks would do it. When they said unto me, it's personal now, let us go into the house of the Lord. And can't you see Hezekiah? He was about to die. The pastor gave the testimony of Deacon Lynch today 11 years ago. Hezekiah thought he was about to die, but he turned his face to the wall, and he prayed to the Lord. And the angel spoke to him and said, Hezekiah, he said, yeah, wipe those tears. I've just added 15 more years to your life. And I could hear Dr. Watts when he took out his pen, and he said, I love the Lord. He heard my cry and pitied every groan. Long as I live and trouble rise, I'll haste unto his throne. Ain't that good news? But you got to stay there and say, I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. And I could see Job. Flesh fell from his bone. He lost his wife and his children. She said, you ought to curse God and die. He said, you speak as a foolish woman. The good Lord give it, and the good Lord take it. Blessed be the name of the Lord. And I stopped by to tell you, you know what happened with Job? He said, Father, I stretch my hand to thee. No other help I know. If thou wilt draw thyself from thee, or whither shall I go? You know why? Because Job had been in the house of the Lord. I was glad when they said unto me. And then the pastor's favorite sermon is in Isaiah chapter 6. And his train filled the temple. But you know why? I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. Ain't that good news? That's good news. That's good news. And then when you get around the communion table, I can see the old mother at my home church in San Francisco, Mother Beatrice Henderson. She's from Natchez, Mississippi. It is found over in Luke chapter 22 and verse 44. Dark the night and cold the ground. Great drops of blood like sweat ran down. But I stopped by to tell you I was glad. But we was just praying. The church is praying. I was glad. This is a good day. If you read Psalms 118 and 22, this is the day the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it. This is marvelous in the Lord's eyes. I was glad. Mothers, I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. And the pastor said he wondered, could these dry bones live? Pastor, we could go down in the valley with Ezekiel. And Ezekiel told the Lord, thou knowest. The Lord already knew. He wanted to know if Ezekiel knew. But I know that the church can live. He said, upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. So these bones can live. But you know what? We got to come together to make up the church. A body of baptized believers on the move. But I was glad when they said unto me, there's a reason for everything in the church. Ushers, you could take your favorite verse. It's our theme verse. I come up off the usher board. I come up through the ranks in church. The usher's theme verse is Psalms 84 and 10. I'd rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God than to dwell in the tents of wickedness. I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. And choir, you ought to be happy too, because you shown up in the Bible. Ephesians 5 and 19, it says, singing songs and making melody in your heart to the Lord. I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. Minister Eugene, you ought to be happy to be a choir director. For Asaph said, my feet had almost slipped until I went into the house of the Lord. I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. And deacons, I got something to tell you too. In 1 Timothy chapter 3 and verse 12 and 13, he who used the office of a deacon purchased to himself a good degree. I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. There's only two callings in the Bible. That's pastor and deacons. And that's the serious calling. That's a gift that God gave to the church. So you ought to be glad. Purchase to yourself a good degree. And then preachers, we ought to be glad too. When God calls us out of darkness into the marvelous light, he sent us over in the book of Romans, chapter 10, verse 9 through 16. He said, how can they hear without a preacher? How can they preach except they be sent? And I stopped by to tell you I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. But I beg the difference. I'm finna close now. Pastor Payton has always told us, you know how the devil, Jesus went down in the lower parts of the hell, and he got to the door and he knocked, and one of Satan's imps came to the door. Y'all call them imps, but we just go ahead and call them busters. That's just what they are, busters. But I stopped by to tell you, he came and he said, who do you want? He said, I want to see Satan. He said, who are you? He said, never mind, just go tell him I want to see him. He said, but who should I teach? He said, just go tell him. He could have told him I am. That I am. But he said, just go tell him I'm at the door. And when the imp went to Satan, he said, there's somebody at the door. Y'all think the first television came out in 1944? I beg the difference. John was on the Isle of Patmos, and he was in the Spirit on the Lord's Day. And he said, how do he look? He said, his eyes were like balls of fire, hair like lamb's wool, feet like polished brass. And I stopped by to tell you I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. And Pastor, I'm finna close now. I can tell you about these 3 D's. You know, Peter denied him, Judas deceived him, and Thomas doubted him. But I thank God about it. You know what he did? He went to a grave, which was a ball tomb, and he stayed there for 3 days and 3 nights. I just told you about them 3 D's, right? But I stopped by to tell you, when death and the grave got together, I love telling the story. Death asked grave, said, grave, do you got him? Grave said, I got him. He said, but grave, this is the man that stepped out on nothing and it became something. This is the same man that said, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep, and the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters, and God said, let there be light, and there was light, and God saw the light that it was good, and God divided the light from the darkness, and God called the light day, and the darkness he called night, and the evening and the morning was the first day. He said, oh grave, do you still got him? Grave said, I got him. Death walked away. He scratched his head. He came back the second time. He said, oh, grave, do you still got him? He said, death, I got him. He said, you got this man that said in 3 days, tear this body down and I'll build it up again. He said, oh, grave, do you still got him? He said, I still got him. He said, this is the same man that fed 5,000. He healed the withered hand. He touched the woman with the issue of blood. He said, oh, grave, do you still got him? Grave said, look at here. I've been holding Abraham. I've been holding Isaac. I've been holding Jacob. I've been holding Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Daniel, Hosea, Joel, Amos, Obadiah, Jonah, Micah, Nahum, Habakkuk, Zephaniah, Haggai, Zechariah. I've been holding them all, but he said, oh, grave, do you still got him? He said, I got him. Death walked away. Came back the 3rd day. He said, oh, grave, do you still got him? Grave said, oh, death, sit down a minute. I got to tell you something. All of a sudden, I had my hand on the grave. All of a sudden, I had my feet on the grave. But I stopped by to tell you there's one more D. On that 3rd day, he got up, not with some power, but with all power in heaven and earth in his hand. I stopped by to tell you I was glad. He said, I'm going away to prepare a place for you, and where I am, there ye may be also, in my Father's house. I was glad when they said unto me, let us go into the house of the Lord. I heard Deacon Cooper sing this morning after he got through praying. I'm so glad I got my religion.